Why are you unreasonable? I saw this thing first, and paid the source crystals for it. Why should I give it to you? Mozoki holding something on her hand, hiding it behind her back, with a full chest up and down, facing a dozen big men without fear. Girl, you can't say that. Since my young master is interested in this thing, he must buy it. We will pay you double for how many source crystals you have. Please also ask the girl to take it out to avoid injury. He is kind. A man snorted coldly on the opposite side. He was upset and his threatening tone was obvious as he spoke. Do I care about your source crystal? Mozoki pursed her lips, turned her head and looked at an old man next to her. Tell me, did I buy it from you first? The old man was obviously the seller, with a frowning look. He glanced at Mozoki and then at the dozen or so menacing guys on the opposite side. He laughed, probably. What's the meaning of this? Mozoki looked at him in shock. Didn't I give you the source crystal? I also gave you a little more source crystal, you still thank me? The old man's mouth twitched and he was silent. The young man who had been surrounded by many martial artists suddenly chuckled, looking at the old man and said, Old man, how much does this girl pay you? The old man looked awkward, and he hesitated for a while before whispering softly, 8,000. 8,000, not too much. This young master is paying it for 10,000, how about the old man sell this thing to me? The young man looked at the old man with a smile. 10,000? The old man was overjoyed when he heard the words, and nodded repeatedly, okay, okay. After agreeing, he looked embarrassed again, but the things have been bought by this girl. What does it matter? It's a business like this. The one with higher price will get it. The young man smiled heartily and looked at Mozoki. Girl, you should hear clearly. This old man's thing, this young master will buy it for 10,000 source crystal. Please take out. The one with higher price will get it. Mozoki bit her silver teeth. Before she finished speaking, she said, okay, then I'll pay 20,000 source crystals. Hearing that, the old man was surprised and happy, never expected that his things could be sold for such a high price. At the same time he was a little upset. To be able to make the two people to buy it like this is surely a good thing, but it was a pity that he didn't recognize it. He sold it as an ordinary item, and it was a bargain for people to pick it up. The young man frowned. There was a bit of ruthless look on his face. This young master has 30,000. Do you have more source crystal? Are you better than me? 50,000. Mozoki threw a number lightly. Suddenly, it fell like an invisible sledgehammer, smashing the opposite young man a bit shorter. The young man's eyes almost pop out, and roared, Little girl! Do you know who this young master is? How dare you steal something from me? I don't know who you are. Mozoki looked at him with disgust. Besides, you are the one who want to grab something from me? You are too unreasonable. Well, you little girl, you really can't cry without seeing the coffin. This young master will let you know that I am the young master of the Flying Saint Palace, Ning Yuancheng, and those who are acquainted will leave the things behind. He, this young master asked you to leave all your things. Ning Yuancheng sneered, his eyes wandering maliciously on Mozoki. Flying Saint Palace. This person is Ning Yuancheng? This girl is in big trouble. Ning Yuancheng's voice fell, and Mozoki didn't respond, but the expressions of the martial artists on the crowd changed slightly. After all, Flying Saint Palace is not the most first-class force in the entire South Territory. It cannot be compared with Heavenly Martial Holy Land, Plain Palace, and Azure Sun Temple, but it is somewhat famous, far from the forces around Maplewood City. As the young master of Flying Saint Palace, Ning Yuancheng fame is naturally not small, at least in the South Territory. He is also a familiar existence to other people. During this period of time, because Vermilion Bird Phoenix appeared, many forces went to Jade Clear Mountain to investigate the situation, and Flying Saint Palace was naturally unavoidable, and the leader of the team was surprisingly the young master Ning Yuancheng. However, after they went to Jade Clear Mountain and saw nothing, they stopped briefly in Maplewood City on the way back. They didn't expect to encounter such a thing in this black market. Ning Yuancheng had a triumphant expression. He thought that after throwing out his name and the power behind him, the woman would definitely have to apologize, and maybe even take the initiative to embrace his arm to ask for forgiveness. Well, although the little girl has a huge birthmark that affects the viewing, Her figure is really nice, especially the full pair of breasts, it is absolutely fun to play. It made no difference when he took off her clothes at night and turned off the lights. Flying Saint Palace? What? I haven't heard of it. Mozoyoki frowned slightly, her face blank. Ning Yuanquan's triumphant expression instantly stiffened on his face, and the faces of many martial artists in the Flying Saint Palace also became gloomy. Bold madman, dare to insult the Flying Saint Palace, take her down for me, this young master will definitely let her know what Flying Saint Palace is. Ning Yuancheng gave orders with a fierce expression. The dozen or so Void King realm martial artists shot without hesitation. Maplewood City is a small city, and even the city lord is only a martial artist in the second order principal source stage, and the two vice city lords are only at the first order principal source stage. There are only 3 principal source stages in total, so they are not in the eyes of Flying Saint Palace, let alone a place like the Black Market, they dare to do it even on the street. What about the city lord's mansion, can it still be against Flying Saint Palace? A dozen people rushed out at the same time. 3 of them moved the fastest, and they came to Mozoyoki in an instant. The 2 were separated from each other, reaching out to Mozoyoki's fragrant shoulders, and patted Mozoyoki's belly with one palm. In their respective palms, power surged. At any rate, they also knew that their young master's order was to take people, not to kill, so they left room for action. The onlookers exclaimed, and all of them looked unbearable. After all, a group of big masters came together to bully a little girl, although the little girl also has the cultivation level of 3rd order Void King realm, but it can always arouse the sympathy of others. Yang Kai couldn't bear to look away, and he made a few noises. His unbearable heart was not because of Mozoyoki, but the Flying Saint Palace martial artists who took the lead in attacking her. What happened on Jade Clear Mountain that day is still fresh in Yang Kai's memory. Even if he had cultivated the 5 elements indestructible sword, he even consumed countless flesh body tempering pills, also had been pierced bloody when he touched Mozoyoki, let alone these guys who didn't know the truth. What's more, Yang Kai just wanted to catch Mozoyoki and take her with him at the time, and didn't want to use his strength, but now these people are angry and take the shot. What? Sure enough, a burst of screams undulated, making the martial artists' onlookers stunned. After seeing the changes in the field, the shocked jaw almost hit the ground. The 2 martial artists who held Mozoyoki's fragrant shoulders yelled and flew back in the air as soon as they touched her. The palms were bloody. The wounds caused by something unknown were deeply visible in the bones. And the martial artist who slapped Mozoyoki's lower abdomen was the most miserable. After the palm print was printed, Mozoyoki received some shocks, but the man also screamed, fell back, with a fiery pain in his palm. Looking around, there was an imprint of a human face on his palm for some reason. The facial features of the human face were distorted, hissing crackling, and the sensational howling sound seemed to pass directly to the depths of the consciousness sea. This martial artist was stuck in place for an instant. In the consciousness sea, a huge grimace face suddenly appeared, with blue-faced fangs, opened its mouth, swallowing his divine consciousness power, such as drinking a sweet spring. The ghost's face showed an extremely happy expression. This person actually doesn't have the ability to resist, and the look in his eyes quickly dimmed. What? Ning Yuancheng saw this scene and immediately screamed. Everything in front of him was beyond his ability to understand. It is clear that the 3 martial artists are attacking Mozoyoki, and the other party is only standing still, her eyes are flustered, as if she doesn't know how to fight back, but he doesn't expect them to suffer heavy casualties without her moving at all. 2 injuries and 1 death, this result almost blinded his eyes. What secret technique is this? Is this girl pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger? Could it be an old witch who has lived for thousands of years, hiding her cultivation level and pretending to be simple? Various thoughts surfaced in Ning Yuanquan's mind, making his back wet in an instant. Retreat. At this moment, the remaining martial artists who also rushed to Mozoyoki's side, were shocked and drew back. The reaction of everyone was surprisingly fast. Seeing that the situation was not good, how could they dare to attack Mozoyoki at will? Frightened and retreated. A man walked out from behind Ning Yuan City with a gloomy expression. This man appeared to be dressed as a middle-aged man. He had been standing silently behind Ning Yuancheng before, with a calm expression on his face. Until now, he slowly walked out and stood in front of Ning Yuancheng. As the young master of Flying Saint Palace, when he travels, he will naturally be surrounded by 1 or 2 strong men. This person is Lu Yi, the expert of Flying Saint Palace who is responsible for protecting Ning Yuancheng, and a second-order principal source stage. As a second-order principal source stage powerhouse, his eyesight was naturally extraordinary, and it was obvious that Mo Zioki had an extraordinary background. It was just now that he saw that the situation was bad, and he drew back his disciple. He stood in front of Ning Yuancheng without a trace, blocked all the angles that might be attacked, and looked at Mo Zioki solemnly, with a deep vision, as if he wanted to examine her from the inside out. You, what do you want to do? Mo Zioki didn't come back to her senses until now, and sternly shouted, you don't come here, I'm not easy to provoke, be careful I hit you. The crowd around the audience couldn't help but roll their eyes. You are not easy to provoke, isn't it obvious? Still need you to speak? To be continued.